definitely a safety component to this, whether they want to admit that or not.
Landline now, welcome back. OOIDA's Executive Vice President Lewie Pugh joins me now. Lewie, how are things going?
Hey, they're going fantastic. How are they going with you?
They're going pretty well, although I don't think I've been as busy as you have been.
Yeah.
Last week you were in D.C. Talk to me about what you were doing there.
Oh, went down to D.C. to try to educate some people on Capitol Hill and maybe over at FMCSA on what the real plight of truckers are and the importance of trucking and the issues that truckers are facing right now. And then got a little hearing dumped on our lap that we did while we were there. That was sort of a last-minute thing on the Senate Commerce Committee, but and met a lot of new lawmakers. We had some overturn in Washington, D.C., which is a good thing a lot of times to have a little overturn down there. And so got some new people kind of educated about OOIDA and about OOIDA's members and, again, the issues and the importance of it. And mainly I spent a lot of time telling everybody that, truckers are a big voting bloc. They help get a lot of you here. It's about time you listen to them and do something for them because you've been kicking things like the parking bill and broker transparency and some of these other things down the line for years now. And it's time for that to stop. It's time to start, having some accountability and taking care of the people who take care of us here in America.
Now, with the new administration, of course, like you said, lots of new faces. What was the feel you got as far as their understanding of trucking issues?
Well, fortunately, the old hands that are still there, like Representative Bost and Representative Nels and some of them, and Representative Larson that I met with, of course, they know the issues, understand the issues, and it's just sort of a recap and retalk and reconnect and when things are coming out. The parking bill dropped when I was there last week, so that's good from Congressman Bost. The new people, it was good. They had a good attitude, I think. I hope it continues. They've heard their voters, and this is on both sides of the aisle. We're a bipartisan organization, so from both sides of the aisle, the new people were very interested to learn. A lot of them were amazed that we have this bathroom issue. Even some were amazed on a parking issue and pay and just, a lot of things. We got into that stuff, but the new people coming that they understand that all this partisan politics stuff is not helping anyone and that they need to come to the middle and we need to work together. And, they hear their voters because their voters and their people out here in the world or outside the Beltway are really suffering. They have been suffering. Washington hasn't been listening to them for a long, long time. And so my hope is, though, that they don't get poisoned by the water in the well, because that seems to happen a lot of times. People go with the best intentions, and then I don't know whether they drink the water or what happens, but they kind of forget where they came from. So let's hope that's not happening. Let's hope, we got some change. But again, I can't say enough. This is people on both sides. And that's, it's hard not to get wrapped up in all this craziness, but I can't say this enough. We as truckers, we as the trucking industry, and we as the American people, we need to focus on the common problems and common issues we have and stop all this focusing on what's dividing us and fight, because it's doing nothing but tearing each other apart. And personally, I think some politicians kind of like that because they can kind of do what they want while we're all fighting with one another. So anyway.
Now, you also met with some reporters, right?
Yeah, I did. I talked to some reporters there as well. Some really good reporters. Nothing like the reporters of Landline and Landline now, but, so some strong second runners.
Yes. What were some of the questions that they had for you?
Mainly interested on kind of what we're seeing on the whole freight fraud issue and that kind of stuff, where we think broker transparency is going to go, where we think the speed limiters are going to go, what kind of bills, what are we going to start pushing in the highway bill, stuff like that. We have approximately 150,000 members who cumulatively own about 240,000 pieces of equipment or operate. OOIDA's mission is to promote and protect the interests of our members and any issues that impact their safety and success, which increasingly includes freight fraud. In trucking, freight fraud is so easy to commit, it doesn't even take a savvy or experienced criminal to pull it off.
Now, you mentioned the hearing. You gave testimony during a Senate subcommittee meeting, which I thought had a great name, by the way, Grand Theft Cargo. I thought that was very clever. Talk to me about what that was.
Yeah, it was pretty much what it said. It was a hearing about the cargo freight and freight fraud that we see out there and freight theft, but a little bit of both. There was myself, the chief head cop. I apologize what his title, but from BNSF Railroad, the top cop at BNSF Railroad. There was a gentleman there from the Academy Sports, the sporting goods retailer. There was a gentleman there who has a trucking company and a brokerage office in Texas, and then there was myself. But with that, they were there. We were all singing from the same hymnal. It really wasn't a very long hearing, as hearings go. It was pretty short because there really wasn't a lot of controversy there wasn't really any amongst us, because we kind of all agreed on what needs to be done, how things need to be handled. But just mainly familiarizing the Senate with what's going on, because as you know, we've seen these people robbing rail cars, and we know what's going on with trucking, where people are posing as brokers or posing as carriers. They're stealing identities. They're getting carriers to haul loads and then have them deliver them to a fictitious, or not, I guess it's a real place, but it's not the right place. And then they're stealing the cargo, or they're stealing a carrier's identity, going and getting a load and stealing the cargo. So all these different kind of things, and talked about that. Talked about, unfortunately, how the feds, being FMCSA, DOJ, and others, have sort of not really done anything on this, and they need to. There was discussion on whether they need more funding, whether they need this. I mean, my attitude at this point is we need to figure out what we're on, kind of stamp back and look. I don't know that they need more funding, but probably they need to move for some funding to a different area. I mean, the frustration for us, and I brought this up, is the FMCSA came out late last year sometime and said that they can't find a safety a coalition to safety from theft, or how that. And of course, if it's not a safety problem, it's not their issue. But we know it does cause a safety. Personal safety, plus it take you out of business. It can make people where they can't afford to fix their trucks and stuff like that. So there's definitely a safety component to this, whether they want to admit that or not. Other thing we talked about was, of course, the National Consumer Complaint Database, and how the name probably should be changed. A lot of truckers don't even know that it exists. I mean, hell, I didn't know it existed until I started working here. I drove truck for 20-some years. I didn't know there was anything like that. So we kind of talked about that. And then also how that not only should they probably do that, but probably somebody should be monitoring and coming back, because as I look at it, it's kind of where all complaints go to die, is what it seems like. People send in the complaints and that's it.
Yeah, I thought the other gentleman that spoke during the hearing, they all came from like a good place as far as examples. I know one guy that you mentioned talked about being a victim of fraud, so I thought that was interesting. What was the main message that you wanted to get across?
The main message I want to get across is that, truckers are losing their business, and this is like become the perfect crime, because nobody seems to understand it. Nobody's enforcing anything to it, and trucking, and it's happening so often. I mean, I said in my testimony, probably while we're sitting here doing this, somebody's getting frauded right now. It's kind of like cybersecurity and that stuff. It's just running rampant in the industry. So, lawmakers, hopefully the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration will start doing the right thing. But if not, lawmakers need to make them do the right thing, and get, whether the FMCSA, and I don't mean to pick on FMCSA, but they're on the front line of this. They know who's registered carriers. They know who's not registered carriers. And the other important thing we talked about was the importance of passing, Fisher-Duckworth bill, because there is that household movers Guide Act or something. The name slips me,
Yeah.
Paul. But anyway, and I know people get confused. Well, why would we care because the household? But there is a part of that bill that brokers have to register with a physical address, and that was my point in my testimony when I was talking. Every one of these cases that we find at OOIDA, they're using just a generic mailbox. We've seen where 8 different companies are using the same mailbox. So that's the first thing. Have a physical address so they're real. They're in the United States because we don't even know they're. And then the second thing, it would actually give FMCSA some strength back where they could actually go after these people and actually give them civil fines, which that was taken away. So that's another problem FMCSA has. They're really not allowed to do things. So that was the point of my testimony. This is happening. This problem is only getting worse. Nobody's doing anything about it. You have a bill you can pass to help with it. That would be a big help. And you can also look at these other things and get started. But somebody needs to do something.
Now, of course, you're there to be the voice for OOIDA and educate people from the owner-operator's perspective. But I'm curious, what do you take away when you do these hearings and when you go to D.C.?
Depends on the hearing. I mean, I took away from this one, it was a little frustrating that there wasn't more senators on the committee that showed up, which is always frustrating. But on the flip side, I was happy with this because everybody spoke. Like all of us kind of sung from the same hymnal and everybody had good examples. I do feel encouraged that there's concern on the Senate level about this and that they're understanding that this is costing the consumer and truckers and rail and everybody in transportation lots and lots of money and something needs done. Sometimes and I was also very happy that nobody on the large lawmakers, which usually the Senate's a lot more calmer, but nobody just went on a crazy tirade that wasn't necessary because that happens sometimes. But again, the Senate usually a little more calmer. But yeah, so I mean, I left with a good feeling. A lot going on in D.C. It was a very short hearing, but as we talked about it last week and reminded somebody else said, this was one subject. Usually these hearings we talk about a lot. This was one subject, and when everybody's pretty much singing from the same hymnal, we all agree what the problem is, and that should be, if nothing else, a bell ringing moment for the Senate is everybody involved saying the same thing. So it's not like you're getting 4 different opinions. That we're all saying the same thing in the end and what needs done the same way.
Yeah, same thing from different perspectives.
Yes.
What were some of the solutions? I know a few people mentioned, some things that should be done. What were some of the solutions?
Yeah, again, some of the solutions we're talking about was, of course, FMCSA monitoring the NCCDB better, getting this Duckworth bill passed, the importance of the physical address. Those were some things as far as trucking that was looked at and asked about. Some of those I brought up. Also the fact is, FMCSA, and I know they're working hard to do this, but, they've got to get this new registration system put up. And, the other suggestion or thing that I brought up, I don't think anybody else really did, but it probably more so I understand and know this more than others, is the fact is we need to make the barrier of entry into transportation as far as trucking or intermediary, make it much harder, make it much difficult. It's too easy. We're giving out these things like candy.
Where do we go from here?
Well, call your lawmaker. I know I say this all the time. It's never too soon to have a good relationship with your lawmakers. But right now, the base thing is to call your lawmaker and tell them to support the Fisher Duckworth bill, this household movers. You can find out at fightingfortruckers.com. You can actually go to fightingfortruckers.com and send your lawmaker a message right there. But that would be the first and foremost thing, as always. And, while you got them on the phone, you're talking, tell them about any other issues you have. I mean, again, I say this till I'm blue in the face, and I know people get tired of hearing it, but at the end of the way, they don't know nothing about what's really going on. They may think they do, but they don't. And the only way they know is if you tell them. And I can guarantee you there's people down there in their ear right now telling them things against you. So you need to be telling them what's for you.
Good advice. Lewie, thank you so much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. And be safe out there, truckers. Thanks for what you do.